Putin orders Wagner mobilization. Is he really desperate and needs their help, or he just wants to eliminate them? At the same time, something bad happened to the Russian soldiers, and Chechens are starting to eliminate the traitors. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's get straight to the point and talk about some ridiculous Russian propaganda. So, in today's episode, it is actually ridiculous Russian propaganda, because Russian propagandists created this video that they allegedly found a passport of the wife of the President Zelensky, Olena Zelenskaya, that she is technically a citizen of Russia. This passport allegedly was issued in Yalta in 2014, but in less than an hour, people were able to see that Russians simply used her literally Instagram photo, cropped her head, and printed this passport, saying that it is actually a real one. At first, this news was across all the federal channels. Everyone was saying, the wife of President Zelensky is Russian herself. What kind of man is he? This is absolutely ridiculous. But as soon as they got exposed, it disappeared everywhere at an instant. And I mean, it is not a secret, the trustworthiness of the Russian propaganda, but it is just basically yet another confirmation of this fact of its clownship. Congratulations, you played yourself. And so yes, now let's get serious and talk about record level support by Germany and ridiculous response by Russians. Then we'll go to the east of Ukraine, where something bad happened to the Russian soldiers, and then to the south of the country, where Chechens are eliminating traitors. And so yes, speaking about Germany, it delivered yet another military support package to Ukraine, which includes 14 all-terrain tracked vehicles, one Biber bridge paver, then some also tank tractors, armored personnel carriers and infantry combat fighting vehicles, in addition to hundreds and thousands of rounds of ammunition. And as of right now, by the end of the third quarter of this year, Germany has sent a total of 3.3 billion euros in military support to Ukraine, which is the record among other European countries. Next we have Poland, which already repaired and sent a batch of Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine, and this was the fastest repair of these tanks in so far reported history. It only took them 2 months. Then we have France, which already pledged 6 self-propelled artillery systems called Caesar to Ukraine, 8 self-propelled bridges/pontoons, and also 8 demining vehicles. And in response to all that, Russia, if you remember, has this airfield in Engels, located on the territory of Russia, which has been recently under several attacks by Ukrainians. Well, Russians came up with another genius solution. So they started literally painting planes on the ground of this airfield, trying to trick Ukrainian drones and satellite images. But just take a look at this picture. There's no way they do look real. To say the least, Russians forgot to even put the shadows. And unlike Russia, I do not need to create any kind of illusions on my channel, because all the views, likes and subscribers are real. And you can test it for yourself. Just please, if you don't mind, like this video and subscribe to my channel if you like this style of daily updating. You can also follow me on Instagram to see how I live outside of YouTube, and I will also be sharing some memes with you. The link is down below. But okay, now as promised, let me give you an extremely quick update from the east, where something bad happened to the Russian soldiers, and then we'll go to the south of the country. But first of all, please allow me to make a quick stop in Sochi, because this is where a Ukrainian-Turkish drone called Bayraktar was spotted by the locals, and as a result of its attack, a local parking lot for helicopters, Russian military helicopters, was damaged. And I mean, just take a look at this map. The alleged starting position of this Bayraktar drone was probably from Odessa, which means that it passed approximately 800 kilometers without being intercepted or even noticed by the Russian air defense. But that was not the only target on the territory of Russia which was attacked, because reportedly a plant in Smolensk, which as you can see is also pretty far from Ukrainian front lines, has also been under attack recently, and reportedly, this is the plant which produces some of the components of the Russian X-59 missiles. So pretty much once again it is either extremely inefficient Russian air defense, or maybe this was a sabotage from within. Let's see. Okay, and now let's go back to the east of Ukraine, and first of all we refer to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, which claims that Russians and Ukrainians continue their combat activities along Kupiansk-Svatove-Kreminna front line, with neither of the sides achieving significant success so far. But Ukrainians were able to destroy a pretty big, reportedly assault group of Russians to the north of Svatove, and then another ammunition warehouse to the south of the city, which was located in Kovalivka. And here is another thing. According to the sources from the within of the Russian military, they are planning to send 12,000 more soldiers to Kupiansk-Svatove-Kreminna front line. The reason is pretty much the same. They have been fighting there for so long without being able to achieve anything, and that's why they want to try and do something. But here is the quick fun fact. These 12,000 soldiers, they were supposed to advance to Kupiansk approximately in winter of this year, and Russians decided to use them way sooner. And to be honest, in my personal opinion, this event might have two potential reasons. The very first reason, and my personal assumption, is that whenever Russian Ministry of Defense claims that the losses of Russians are not that significant, it looks like that this claim is not so true. And the second reason, once again because Russians are using these 12,000 soldiers from reserve, which are supposed to be attacking in the winter, it looks like that Russians, they do not care that much, because they will recruit more soldiers before the winter, which once again brings the question of Putin's mobilization, which started on October 1st, is that those conscripts which were promised not to be sent to Ukraine, also looks like that this promise is not that true. But I mean, okay, as we go down the eastern front lines, here is the picture of a destroyed Russian T-80 tank and also two infantry fighting vehicles BMP-1. And in addition to that, right here we have an action-packed Ukrainian unexpected raid against Russian defenses in the east, and in just several minutes they were able to completely crush them and breach these trenches. The video is truly amazing, so much action happening in so little period of time. Just please go ahead and watch the uncensored version on my Patreon. YouTube will obviously never allow me this kind of footage on their platform, and also this is a very great way to support my work, only starting as little as $4 for the entire month. The link to my Patreon is down below. There is 1 week of free access to see for you if you like it or not, and the link is down below. Next we get closer to Bakhmut area, and according to Ukrainian sources, they continue to push Russians away from their trenches located in the east of Andriivka. But most importantly is the video right here of Russian soldiers from Klishchiivka. This video was recorded several days ago, and basically what they're saying is that in case something bad happens to us, this video will automatically go live and spread across Telegram channels and pretty much across the internet. And as you can see, this video is now live. They also claim that the situation in this settlement is extremely complicated. Ukrainians are advancing and they're heavily using the artillery and Leopard 2 tanks, and they push them pretty much every single day. And it's getting extremely complicated for Russians to hold them. But they are there just to quote-unquote do their job, and despite the heavy losses they continue to be there and trying to protect, for some reason, Klishchiivka. And also several times they requested for an urgent evacuation or at least artillery support from the forces behind them, and guess what? They never got it, obviously. And just once again to reinforce the fact, this video is now live, which basically means something bad did happen to these Russian forces. And in confirmation of all this we've been just discussing, as you can see from this map, you can see that Ukrainians indeed were able to advance a little bit closer to the Russian front lines between Klishchiivka and Andriivka. And then we have another claim about the Russian forces in the eastern parts of Ukraine, is that they also started bringing even more reinforcements to Marinka-Vuglidar direction, located right here. The direction which was pretty unsuccessful for Russia Russians. Pretty much since the beginning of this invasion, it was a lot of massacres happening for the Russian forces in these two cities. Every single time they're trying to attack, they were absolutely successfully repelled by Ukrainians. And guess what? Now they're about to do exactly the same. What is the definition of insanity? It is when you do exactly the same thing and you expect a different result. Russians are insane. And just one last thing before we go to the south is that if you remember from one of my previous videos, Russians are trying to build a road, both for the cars and the railway one, between Mariupol and Rostov-on-Don. And so, as you can see from these satellite images, indeed the process has already started. It is pretty interesting how fast they can start building things military related, but whenever it's some civilian infrastructure needs to be repaired somewhere deep within the country, it might take several decades and still not be fixed. And so yes, now let me give you a similar quick update from the south, where Chechens are eliminating traitors, and then we'll talk about Putin's order to mobilize Wagner. So yes, to begin with the south, right here is the video from Kherson, where unfortunately as a result of a Russian attack, a local church, hospital and couple residential buildings were severely damaged. And here is the unfortunate statistics, because in the month of September, Russians attacked the territory of Ukraine the record number of times. It was 503 attacks using drones and missiles, and the previous record was only recorded in May, when the number of these attacks was 413. Next to go along the southern front lines, and as you can see from this video, Ukrainians were able to successfully attack a concentration of Russian forces, which once again brings the question: one country is targeting civilian objects, another one is targeting military-related objects. Which country is fighting for the good? Let me know in the comments. Next, we once again refer to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, which claims that the most significant combat activities are happening to the south of Robotyne. The situation is changing almost every single day, with some small territories changing hands almost daily. But according to Ukrainians, they're able to destroy a relatively big assault group of Russians, along with their 2 armored personnel carriers next to Kopani. Next, we also have a video from this front line, which basically shows us that Ukrainians were able to destroy a Russian multiple launch rocket system called Tor. And the most intense attacks by Russians are happening to the south, next to this front line between Novoprokopivka and Verbove, located right here, and Ukrainians so far were able to successfully repel pretty much every single attack by Russians. And besides that, Ukrainians are also able to initiate their own small counteroffensive. Such, for example, according to this video of one of night raids, Ukrainians using drones were able to destroy some position of Russians located to the south of Robotyne and eliminate some soldiers inside trenches. And as a result of all these combat activities, as you can see from this map, Ukrainians indeed were able to liberate a relatively good portion of northern western Novoprokopivka, as you can see right here. But wait, there is more. Because one of the most significant news which just recently became public is that a lot of Kadyrov Chechens, they do work as this barrier, so-called barrier forces. What it basically means is that they do not take active part in the combat activities, they just force Russian conventional forces to advance and fight Ukrainians, and in case Russians they get scared and they start running away, Chechens will be the ones to eliminate these traitors. Basically the very same tactics that Joseph Stalin was using during the Second World War. And I mean, yes, I do know the obsession of Putin with this event and with the persona of Stalin as a whole, but I mean, just using the very same tactics, which is already 80 plus years old, I do not honestly think that it will yield the very same results. And just when you thought that this was the only thing, well, it's not. Because Putin recently ordered the former Wagner private military company chief to start a mobilization of volunteer forces. This new Wagner chief, Mr. Troshev, is considered by actual Wagner soldiers as one of the biggest traitors, because unlike Prigozhin, which his mentality was to never cooperate with Putin or the Ministry of Defense of Russia, this Mr. Troshev, he did exactly the opposite. That is why it will be, I think, very complicated for him to organize Wagner and make them fight on the side of Russians. But nevertheless, he is still tasked with this close to impossible mission. But you know what, this is not obviously the very first time we hear about Wagner returning to Ukraine, because previously they already were noticed specifically along the eastern front lines. But these were the actual Wagner soldiers who it was their own initiative to go back and fight in the country. And even though we've been talking about the deployment of Wagner in Ukraine on this channel for pretty much the entire last week, it has been recently also confirmed by the British intelligence report, and yes, just like I was also mentioning, the majority of these soldiers are spotted around Bakhmut area. But honestly, I see my two very own reasons why Wagner voluntarily is being called back to Ukraine by Putin. The very first one is that once again he might feel very desperate and that he does need their help, and reason number two, it is because he wants to finally and completely terminate this private military company, but he wants to do it with the hands of Ukrainians. So for him, it will be basically killing two birds with one stone. He will send those people in Ukraine and maybe they will even recapture some territories, but in case they are not successful, they will be terminated. In the end, Putin is satisfied. And what it also means is that in the near future we will see a lot of news about Wagner in Ukraine. I will be also here to report on them, so if you don't want to miss them, just please consider once again subscribing to my channel. It only takes one click. Thank you so much, patrons, for your support, and see you tomorrow.